So it is an heroic drama because I explain all the problems that we have with our customer and the nights, the weekends, and everything, and how we discovered the different tools, and we were happy at the end. So this is the photo that I try to describe, me in jQuery, loving on conferences. This is what I already said, Mexican living in Switzerland, work likes open source, Java champion, groundbreaker ambassador, work for Caracon. Perfect. When you said integration test, a lot of people think end-to-end test, you test everything. That's a myth. So integration test is just two things. And this is the image that everybody tells you or shows you when we're talking about integration test. Mine is a little bit different. This is the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, in CERN. So these are the magnetic bipoles. They are huge. They have expended a lot of money into this testing facility. You know that the CERN was stopped for 2 or 3 years in October of 2008. The problem was the connection between two dipoles. So, integration tests, very expensive. And how expensive was this? They blew up 24 of 30 dipoles. And let me tell you that the company that actually makes the dipoles, they do not longer make them or do not longer exist because they don't have many clients at CERN. So very expensive. We should do integration tests whenever it's possible. So I explained, you already know, with Java we had the right ones run everywhere. Now with containers we have a different paradigms, like package ones, deploy anywhere. So containers are really useful. I particularly use them for deployment, for production, and from tests. Here's where I describe the project that I told you about that make us cry. And this was part of the problem. We were, for developing, we were using H2. The customer has Postgres for. It's not production. The compatibility mode is not enough. So this is what we started. We start saying our fellow developers, you don't have to install Docker locally in your machine. No, you don't have to install locally Postgres in your machine. You can your spin-off Docker container. The examples the code that we're going to see, it's with 10.5 Alpine instead of 9.4. And this is the same thing, but now we're using the Docker Compose file. So we were happy at that point. But the client had different environments. And this is important. I don't know if you have seen or read this, this book. It's really nice. It's kind of a novel. And in here, we incorporate a lot of the ideas of developer DevOps. And to frame this concept, let's remember when we start listening or hearing a lot about containers, we heard this phrase like, your machines, your containers, your servers should be treated as cattle instead of as a pet. The difference, and Martin Fallow has a really nice concept, that a Snowflake server versus the Phoenix server. The idea is that the Snowflake servers, they evolve. Like somebody is patching them, somebody creates, change the configuration, and at some point you lose track of what or how this server came to be. And what people say is, and it's totally true, I totally support this idea, is that nobody later on wants to change anything with a server that they cannot reproduce. Even restarting a server of this nature, it's scary in itself. So what they always tell you is, if there is a deviation of the configuration, security patches, or whatever, make sure that you have the recipe explained somewhere where you describe the process of how you got there. So this is the idea of creating base images. Okay, and let's start with the code. Yes. Hopefully, we will come back. Yes. So as I said, for this particular plugin, what I'm going to show is a Micronaut application. The Micronaut application, here it is. It's really simple. It's just has two domains, a book and a gen. It has a controller that displays the ID or saves new gens on the database. And if we go to the configuration, which is the configuration in the resources, we see that they are using actually, if there is nothing defined, they're going to use H2 with these default values, etc., etc. So let's see how this application actually runs. Where am I? No, I'm not even in the project. Okay, so let's run it. I'm using Gradle, and it will compile. And then it is going to create the schema, because that's what the configuration is it's detailing. So we create the table book, we create the table, this one. And what I'm going to do is call that endpoint. Don't you love it? Don't worry, for that, we usually have Ixchel. It's careful enough to have plan B, always, except when the computer doesn't work at all. And let's see what is happening here. What? Okay. Okay. Sometimes when you use notes, text editors, or something like that, it transforms the single quotes to something else. But as you can see, after fixing that, we can see that the endpoint is returning a success and saying, yes, he was able to add into the H2 memory database the first entry. So this is running with Gradle. Now we're going to create, really simple, the Docker image of the Micronaut. The Micronaut, because this is the default, well, one of their starters, comes with a Docker file. And in this Docker file, what they're doing is copying the jar that it has been created and then running inside the container a JavaOps. In this case, this is not the standard one. If you go into the version of the GitHub repository of this example, you will see that they are running OpenJDK 8, update 171. In this case, I wanted to change it to OpenJDK 13 early access. So, and of course, they don't provide any support for Gradle for creating these Dockers images. In this case, I'm going to add it by using the Benjamin Munchko Gradle Docker plugin, the latest version. And what I'm doing here, and it's interesting, I'm first of all have a very basic Gradle task that is actually going to copy. First, I'm going to say that I depend on the shadow jar task, and I'm going to copy it into a assembly folder. Later on, I'm declaring, or yes, declaring this task for building the application image, creating the app container, and starting and ending. If I go here and Docker images, well, I have several images. I have several from Java, but nothing that looks like test app latest. If I go to the right directory, it's even better. Yeah, it was almost there. If I check what tasks I have available here, you will see that I have exactly what I said, the Docker Compose API, and let's create the app container. So what you're going to do, it's exactly that. Gradle doing the shadow work because I depend on the jar that is generating. Later on, creating the image with OpenJDK 13 early access. And then it will create the image and put it in my Docker local registry. What is also interesting, let's see if I have those pages. Yes. Let's go to the user guide. And of course, I restarted my machine. And of course, I don't have network anymore. Of course. But don't worry, we have planned almost B. Yes, this slide. In this slide, I always have plan B. Not only you can build the Docker images, you can publish them to different registries. So what I'm going to hopefully is building the app eventually is going to finish. If I don't have a network, then it's going to be difficult. Okay, at this point, you will have to trust that everything that requires network, it's working in my machine. I'm so sad for that. Well, this one is going to create the image. And while we wait for that, we actually are not even waiting for that, because I want to show you the other thing that I described. Let's go to the full glory of this plugin. In the full glory of this plugin, this is what you are going to see. Now I created two different folders. One is using the one that we already saw, OpenJDK 13 early access. And here I'm going to use Zulu OpenJDK Alpine version 11. And now this looks a little bit different, but in essence it's the same thing. I have here a list of the different versions that I want to create. I'm going to create the different tasks, which are the same ones as the basic ones that you saw. Now, if I run the same command, you will be able to see that I have create the app container OpenJDK, create the app container Zulu. And if we were able, let's see if let's see if for some strange reason this is going, yes! Well, no. Okay, not network, but as you can see, this is the same idea. I'm creating different versions of the Docker containers, and after this, I'm going to publish them into an outside or online Docker registry. That's a shame. Okay, but let's continue. let's not be depressed by this. Okay, so this is what I explained first. I'm creating, why I don't see my, okay, it doesn't matter. I don't see my pointer, so I cannot show you, but I can show you here. Okay, so I'm copying the resources, I'm creating the image, I'm adding a tag. Then I can even define what are the ports that are exposed and how to bind the different ports into the container. And even you have an internal reference to the container ID, so you can create this kind of tasks, starting and stopping the containers. This was the most complicated because it's dynamic and creating different tasks depending if it's OpenJDK and so on. I already showed you a little bit about this, that with this plugin you can even publish the Docker images to one different registries. So now we're almost happy because I can create different images easily. It's part of my CI/CD flow, and Docker Compose looks tempting at this point. Let's return. So at that point we were more or less happy. And as I explained, we were using Flyway instead of Liquibase. Oh my goodness, they have just told me that it's 10 minutes, so we were using Flyway to do the migration schemas. And so when you are migrating schemas or migrating data, it's really important that you test. Because if you release your artifact, your application, and you are running a migration script, well, obviously there's some, like for example, Liquibase or Flyway with a little bit more difficulty, allow you to apply different scripts to correct any damage in terms of the schema. But if you are already migrating the data and something went completely wrong, there is no way you are going to be able to solve that, except for restoring your database. So this was my attempt, well, our team attempt to use Docker Compose, and I kind of explained you two of the problems. When you use Docker Compose either locally on your CI/CD system, the first problem that you will find is that even though there is a dependency, and in the Docker Compose version before I think 2.7, I think you probably know better, we had depends on a different module and condition. And if that condition was a health check. But in version 3, we kind of stopped using it. And if you're using Swarm, you also know that it's no longer available either. So a lot of people, what they use is this, a command. And you wait for it. And it's really available in the net. Google. And what it's going to do is that as soon as it's going to start listening for a port, in this case on the container DB, for the port 5432 that starts receiving connections, and after that we run a command. So, yeah, right. And this is the problem that I described you a little bit. Docker Compose plugin allows you to expose the variable, for example, the ports that are binding, because now you can randomize them, but as a system properties or as environment variables. And I already explained that this doesn't look good in your application properties. So I was like that. Yes, and the zombie containers factor that I already explained. Then we discovered testContainers. And why I was so happy with this because it just allows you automatic discovery of local Docker environments. Starts and stops the container really well. It has some strategies for wait for it. And as I said, the cleanup was really nice. Well integrated with JUnit. I'm going to show you really fast some examples with JUnit 5. And it has also support for Spock, Scala, Python, and different wrappers. And let's go to the demo really fast. Oh my goodness, this is the first time I'm being, okay. So, wait a second. Oh no. And because you will find with me that there are two types of examples. Either I create a really simple application like the Micronaut that is a testing or a sample, or I really, really like to be very concise in my example. So I'm going to, okay, don't worry, it's the version of Java. And if you don't use SDK for controlling the versions of your, okay. So we are using, yes, SDK use Java. We go to this one. Because Groovy Console is not working correctly with Java 11.02, that was the problem. Okay, yes. Fingers crossed. And this is not working. Ah, no, yes, it's working. Oh, my goodness. Well, if you are like me, having to deal with different versions of Java, now I have 5 minutes, with different versions of Java, and I totally recommend you to have a look to this tool. It's really neat. As you can see, I can change really easy the versions of the Java that I'm using, and not only that, I can have one version in one bash, and another version running in a different bash. So that's neat. Well, but I'm not giving a talk on that. And this is not working still. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see if I have locally another version. Okay. It's part of the problem is that I had to restart. No. Let's see if I can change that. I don't have any other one. Okay, doesn't matter. We are not going to be able to execute the examples, but I'm going to show them no matter what. Okay, what I like about showing this particular example in the Groovy console is that it fits in a single page, and also you have here all the dependencies because we are using graph, and so there is no way that you need to do more than one click to know what version of testContainer I'm using, what version of JUnit I'm using. It's all there. And in this particular example, what we are doing is generating a container from this particular image. This one, it's exposing port 8000. And this one, I have another talk about WORA Rest Assured Open API. And if you have heard about Open API, you know that it's format, a standard format for documented REST APIs. And if you create follow that particular format to document your REST API, there are tools out there that can create mocks. And this application is actually taking the OpenAPI specification that I have here and creating a mock. So this by itself is going to create a REST service that is going to return whenever I do a request on user login. It's going to return me the example on that specific REST endpoint. So, but the most important part here is, here, I don't have to, the most important thing that I wanted to show you here is this, that you can specify in the different type of containers different weight strategies. For example, this container and the tests are going to run after we are ready that the container is listening, or yes, it's actually accepting or returning a status code to 200 on this particular path. And after that, this is a really easy test. It's going to use connect, send into the body the user and params, do the fetch on the, well, the get on the user login, and then verify that I have in the return body a name. So it's really simple. Let's see another one that is really simple too. This is using testContainers MySQL, this version, 1.10.6. And this is the most trivial MySQL test container that you can see. At the beginning of the test, well, yeah, in this test, I'm declaring a MySQL container. Immediately after I'm starting the MySQL container, I'm performing a query, which actually does this, and then I double check that I'm getting a 1, and then I stop the container. If I wanted, I could ask from the test container what is the JDBC URL, what is the user of the database, what is the password. If for some reason you configure it to a different port, you can have the list of first map ports. And finally, is exactly the same. Okay, at least this still works. It's exactly the same with a Postgres container. So I hope even with this presentation, you get an idea, because I cannot only show you how rich, oh yes, yes, okay, so here you're using different waiting strategies. Wait for until there is a wait in the log message. You can wait for a specific URL. You can wait for a specific set of codes. Okay, and these are the standard database containers that you can find. I show you how in the two Groovy consoles. No, not network, but at least you can see that the documentation is really nice. There are several waiting strategies, so that actually makes your test easy to configure and to see. And yes, this is important. Benjamin, thank you very much for this presentation. I mean, it was possible because of the work of Benjamin. Mr. Hackey, Kevin, who is also presenting a lot of test containers. And I totally suggest you to follow these people. Andres Almira, because he always helped me with my Gradle builds. testContainers, because it has made my integration test more easy. And Micronaut, because I cannot tell you how easy it was to create applications or modify them. And they are fast, the footprint is low. So later on, I will, if you have questions about the Micronaut application that I kind of show here super fast, we can talk about it. But I think I'm run out of time. I think. Yes? Yes. So thank you very much.